In the world of solo leveling, hunters are the peak of human society, serving both as soldiers and protectors. And the strongest of all of them is, of course, Sung Jinwoo. So what would happen if Sung Jinwoo fought against the strongest military in the entire world? Would he be able to beat the US, or will he just overwhelm them like it's nothing? Well, first let's add a rule to make things more interesting. You see, Sung Jinwoo has over 10 million shadows in his army by the end of the series. Those include the normal knights, orcs, giants, dragons, and Bellion's forces. So to make things fair and even more interesting, we'll divide his army by rank and let them fight the US military from 3 different eras. First, we have the Civil War era versus the basic to elite grade shadows. Second is the US military from World War II versus basic to elite knight grade. And lastly is the current US military versus all the shadows plus Sung Jinwoo himself. To spice things up even more, once the shadows are beaten, they can't regenerate and will be sent back to Sung Jinwoo. Finally, the battlefield is America itself. And before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Basic to elite grade versus Civil War US. So let's begin with the US military back during the Civil War. Compared to today's standards, they're pretty weak, but they're up against Sung Jinwoo's basic to elite grade soldiers. That's because Sung Jinwoo's shadows are ranked from basic, normal, elite knight, Commander General, Marshal, and finally, Grand Marshal. Going back to the battle, the basic to elite shadow strength ranges from E rank hunter level all the way to B rank. These were the ants, the knights, the mages, and some other beasts. The US military during the Civil War may have still used muskets, but they already had access to cannons. The Gatling gun was also first used during this time. Not only that, there were a total of 3 million soldiers during the Civil War if you combine the Union and Confederate armies. Since the basic to elite grade soldiers don't have any personality and have little to no intelligence, it's pretty easy to assume that the beast type soldiers would instantly just charge at the US military. The shadows would catch the US off guard and they'd steadily lose ground. However, the advance of the shadows would instantly be put to a halt once the US realizes what's going on and sets up its defenses. It's going to be a battle of attrition, but the only difference here is that the shadows don't feel any type of fear, and they'll just throw themselves at the US soldiers without a care for their lives. There are also the mages that could serve as the shadows' artillery, knocking out US fortifications for the melee type shadows to swarm in and kill everyone. Plus, elite grade soldiers might only be killed by high powered ammunition like the Blakely rifled gun, multiple shots from a Gatling gun, mortars, or a direct hit from a cannonball. All in all, it would be a hard battle, but I'd say the shadows would be able to pull off a victory, either when the US just surrenders out of pure terror, or they just straight up kill every single soldier the US has as they completely outnumber them. But was this the US military's full potential? Basic to elite knight grade versus World War II US. Well, our next face-off is going to be knight to elite knight grade shadows versus World War II era US military. Knight to elite knight grade shadows include terrifying monsters like the Shadow Giants, Kazel, Iron, and Tank. They're stronger than A rank hunters and are as strong as basic S rank hunters like Bak Yun-hoo. The only exceptions here are the shadows like Bellion and his army. Meanwhile, the US military has evolved drastically. They have planes, aircraft carriers, tanks, and a whole lot of artillery. There were over 16 million soldiers in the US military during World War II, which is larger than Sung Jinwoo's total shadow count. But not all of them are infantry. Some work in logistics, others are pilots, drivers, and doctors. So what happens? Well, the shadows have soldiers that can fight in the air and in the water, which means the US Navy and Air Force are in trouble. The entire war would be so chaotic with millions of shadows led by Iron and Tank attacking US bases on land, while gigantic Naga, like Jima, launch surprise attacks against the battleships and aircraft carriers. US Air Force would have more of an advantage considering that the Shadow's air power is pretty limited, with probably more than a dozen wyverns and weaker dragons, but remember, those monsters are pretty strong too. If the Air Force does wipe out all the dragons and wyverns, then the US military would have a better chance at beating the shadows. They just hold their line while their bombers and fighters attack from above. But it would be a war of time. Will the US be able to wipe out millions of powerful shadows before all their ground forces and navy are destroyed? Or will the shadows be fast enough to deal enough damage that the US military won't be able to fight back anymore? I'd give the US military a 40% chance of winning, because even though they have air superiority, the overwhelming strength of the shadows on the land might be enough to break the US and force a surrender. I mean, they have hundreds of giants that might be only killed by a nuke, and the US didn't make the atomic bomb until 1945. But now, this is where the fun begins, as we have Sung Jinwoo's army versus the current US military. Sung Jinwoo himself is present, plus we have Bellions, Igris, Beru, the dragons from Antares' army, the complete 10 million package. However, the US military isn't willing to back down either. Right now, the US Army has some pretty insane weapons. The US has Hellfire drones, stealth bombers, and not to mention, over 3,000 nuclear warheads. This is a battle to see who could annihilate who first. And if they go all out, the two armies might make the United States a wasteland. Since Sung Jinwoo is commanding the Shadow Army, they'd start using advanced tactics, and instead of just charging straight on, they might target important military facilities like headquarters and radar stations. Sung Jinwoo himself might just instantly assassinate every single important military official in the US, including the president. Even Bellion, the strongest shadow in existence, could possibly wipe out millions of US soldiers before he could be stopped, if he can be stopped. In the series, they called on all the world's S-rank hunters to fight him, and the Shadow Monarch's original army, and Sung Jinwoo's stronger than him. If the US military was crazy enough, they could just use all their nuclear arsenal and target Sung Jinwoo, hoping to take him out by sacrificing a large portion of their country. But I don't think that's going to work, because Sung Jinwoo might be able to shoot all of the missiles down before they hit him, or worse, just take no damage at all, considering that by the end of solar leveling, he's on the level of a god. No matter what they throw at him, Sung Jinwoo is still coming out on top. And it's only a matter of time before his shadows destroy the entire US military. I mean, even if they use the best special forces operatives to defend their generals, Beru is just going to cut through them like butter. Not to mention, if they launch a full-on assault, Tusk Jinwoo's very own personal laser cannon is going to tear them to shreds. Even the US Air Force might not be able to compete, as most Marshall-grade shadows can fly, and the shadows Bellion brought with him had wings. If the US military was truly a threat to Sung Jinwoo, they would have a presence in the original series, but seeing as Sung Jinwoo soloed god-like beings known as monarchs all on his own, I think the US military doesn't stand a chance. The title of this video shouldn't have been "Can Sung Jinwoo beat the US military?" but "Can the US military beat Sung Jinwoo?" But what do you think? Do you think the US military would be able to beat Sung Jinwoo? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell notification for more videos like this one.